A citizen-led petition calling for Alberta to seek independence from Canada is gaining momentum across the province.
Alberta needs to be strong and free from the shackles of the Liberal government. We are tired. We don't matter in this relationship, and it has to stop. I think we've had enough.
The Stay Free Alberta campaign is collecting signatures for the chance to vote on the question. Do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be a part of Canada to become an independent state? That's the question that they're hoping for. The push comes as new polling suggests support for Alberta sovereignty is on the rise. Matt Solberg is a partner at New West Public Affairs. He spent more than a decade working in and around Alberta politics, most recently serving on the transition team for Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. And he's joining us live from Edmonton this morning. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
You and I spoke just before the election. We talked then about this growing frustration Alberta was feeling with Ottawa. Now it's not quite a year since the Liberals were voted back into government, and those grumblings has solidified into this position and petition. And what we also have pictures of is these long lines of people waiting to sign. They need 178,000 signatures by May 2nd to trigger a provincial referendum. Do you think they'll get there?
I do. I think at this point, the numbers are surprisingly strong. These events have been incredibly well attended. There was one here in Edmonton, just a few blocks from where I am now, on the weekend that had, pictures of what appeared to be thousands of people lined up. I know that there's another one in Calgary later on this week that has been moved from one building at the Stampede grounds to a larger one, with organizers expecting upwards of 7,500 people. So at this point, I think it's likely that they get the number of signatures that they need.
Yeah, to that point, Matt, that event is also being now billed as not just a signing of the petition, but as a rally. So it'll be interesting to see sort of the sentiment, what comes out of that. Listen, the polling right now shows that 31% of Albertans support this idea of independence. 62 right now are saying they oppose it. Is this enough momentum to justify getting that referendum placed to the rest of the province? And where does the momentum go if there's not enough to get this question asked?
Well, look, I do think that at this point it's enough to get the question asked. As long as they get the number of signatures that are required. That's sort of been the rule of the game here. Since the legislation was amended a few months ago, and the risk being that as you pointed out, if the question is not asked, then I do think that the organizers, the people behind this movement, will find other ways to have their views known, to rabble-rouse, to ensure that that the public understands that there is a not insignificant portion of the population that want this question put to the people. And we've seen what this can do politically when this type of emotion is not channeled towards something more productive like a vote. We saw it during COVID. We've seen it during other sort of protest events in the last few years, and that has led to significant political change here in Alberta. So this is probably the most effective way of channeling that energy into something, and we'll see if this gets on the ballot later this year.
Okay, what would a referendum actually do?
Well, I mean, look, that's the big question. I think, part of this is looking at the Quebec example in the Clarity Act and understanding through that legislation what this would do. My understanding is that, if Alberta were to vote yes on independence, that it would trigger a series of prolonged negotiations with the rest of the country. It would also force Alberta to go and negotiate with the rest of the world on some pretty significant things like trade agreements. And so, for those who think this is going to just happen overnight and one day we'll wake up and be a free republic, I think they've been maybe snowed over a little bit on the important details here that would still need to be determined.
Yeah, I want to take this out of the provincial realm and move it national, because if it does become a referendum question, that's what happened. We saw there's, those of us who are around who remember what happened in Quebec, right? My Canada includes Quebec, and it became a national crisis. So when I'm looking at Prime Minister Mark Carney, who is right now overseas trying to present Canada as a stable front and as a good place to invest, it feels like there's a possible toehold for, or even a foothold now, for division coming from the West, coming from Alberta. And then you've also got the leader of the opposition whose riding is now in rural Alberta. So broaden this out to the national stage. What does Mark Carney need to do to bring this to a close, really, to satisfy both the West and national interests?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, and I think it's important to remember that this sentiment has existed in Alberta, for time immemorial. Essentially, since the founding of the province, there's been a large population that has been sort of unhappy with the terms of confederation. I would say, though, for the Prime Minister, the things that he is doing already are exactly what I think need to be done to start satisfying at least a portion of the public who are maybe on the fence on this issue. And that is, sitting down with the provincial leaders, with Premier Smith here in Alberta, and understanding the issues that are really driving some of the angst. The MOU on an energy pipeline to the West Coast that was signed in the fall is a really solid step here. Now, of course, that's just a piece of paper, and I think a lot of people are wanting that to turn into meaningful progress towards building a pipeline. But those kinds of actions, I think, have an incredible effect at dampening the sovereignty sort of movement, at least amongst those who are sort of sitting on the fence. They're in the middle ground. There are some hardcore separatists that will not be satisfied. In fact, we're upset that that Premier Smith was even having to meet with the Prime Minister to talk about these things. But for the middle of the road Albertan, they want to see action on getting products to market. And just the appearance and feeling of fundamental fairness here in this country.
Matt Solberg, good to have you back on the show. Thanks for joining us from Edmonton this morning.
Thank you.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.